of Islip Supervisor Angie Carpenter, welcoming you to another edition of Supervisor Spotlight. And I'm absolutely delighted today in our sort of makeshift studio here to have with us the Commissioner of Public Safety, Anthony Prudenti, and also the Chief Fire Marshal, Rob Doucet. And we're going to kind of go through a little bit about what the Public Safety Division is all about. As I said, Anthony is the Commissioner. He has a Deputy Commissioner, Rich Bastides, Chief Fire Marshal. We have Code Enforcement, Jason Mistretta, the Harbor Patrol, and a lot of other little divisions amongst your many responsibilities. And you do it so well, and we appreciate it. So we thought today to give you a brief little overview of the department. So, starting with the Fire Marshal's office, and a lot of times people who are out there listening, watching now, you may have had experience with calling in a complaint of a suspected multi-family that is in a single-family neighborhood, or people leaving cars and boats and other assorted things on their property inappropriately against town code, and just a litany of kinds of complaints. So you call constituent services, you call public safety, or you call the supervisor's office. And our first line is to turn to Tony and deploy it to the appropriate division, if you will.
Correct.
So let's take an example of a multifamily home. You know, you see a second mailbox, you see 6 cars. It is more than obvious that there's more than one family living in a home inappropriately. But it's not as simple as calling Tony calling Rob in to check, because there is a process. So explain what happens.
So we'd start when the person made the complaint, try at that entry point of making that call or receiving that call, try to get as much information that the caller could provide to help the investigator out in the field. More information, obviously, the better it is to start the investigation out. The way it's divided here in the town, residential would go to code enforcement, and commercial properties would go to the fire marshal's office. And we dispatch a code investigator, or in Rob's case, a fire marshal would go out and investigate the alleged complaint. Mm-hmm. And we chart all that in real time. So the people, we go out on those cases relatively fast. They'll report back what their findings are. Hopefully for the satisfaction of the complainant, everything is resolved. But there is a process, and sometimes, like any other case, it takes, sometimes they take a lot longer.
And one of the things that is so frustrating sometimes is that, people do have rights. You can't there is a process in place that we are required by law to follow.
It's true, and with the advent of the bail reform, an institution, it established another layer of paperwork that we have to follow, because it is a criminal proceeding with discovery and stuff. So we had to switch gears and move with the law change to abide by that.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because we just came through a pretty spirited campaign, and one of the biggest issues was bail reform and people wanting to feel safe, et cetera. And that legislation that was passed in Albany had a trickle-down effect to us here in the town, and how we do our jobs, how Rob does his job. So explain a little bit, for those of us who aren't attorneys, discovery, how did that impact what we do?
So real briefly, not to get on a high level with it, but the discovery was meant for criminal proceedings, not really intended for the local town, but since we do follow 5th District Court criminal proceeding, we had to follow the discovery laws. And with that was, if a person gets a summons, within 24 hours of the issuance of the summons, all that paperwork, everything from the caller's information to the original complaint, and all the paperwork has to be filed with the court within 24 hours. So in our process, what normally would happen is, as you're investigating those crimes or the case, you really have to stop what you're doing and make sure all that information gets to the town attorney in the allotted time, signed off, and submitted down in district court within that 24-hour time period. So It does, staffing-wise, it took a toll on us. It slowed down some investigations when you get to that point, but that was an unintended consequence of that law change.
Well, having been part of a legislative body for many years, unfortunately, a lot of times in their, eagerness to come up with legislation,
Yeah.
legislators, be they assembly people, senators, county legislators, whatever they are just so gung-ho about coming up with legislation that they don't always stop and think about the unintended consequences. And it had a financial impact to us. Yep. It drew the courts to a halt. The first couple of months of the year, we couldn't even process anything.
Right.
So, it's almost one of these be careful what you wish for
Right.
kind of things.
Right. So one of the things that we put in our toolbox to help us with that was issuance of notice to comply on some of the minor with quality of life, tall grass, litter and debris, unregistered cars, and instead of going the summons route right away, we give the notice to comply to the complainant to give them an opportunity to cure those complaints. And I'll tell you, we've been doing it for a little over a year, and our success rate has been close to 70% compliance, which is great. So we've helped the caller who complained that Mr. Smith didn't mow his lawn. We gave him 7 to 10 days to cure that. He mowed his lawn in that time. Yeah. So the complainant's happy, and the person complied.
Well, you're giving them an opportunity, because I think a lot of times there are circumstances that they just can't help,
right.
And things happen, and to just go in there and issue a summons right off the bat, causing them, having to respond to it, having to pay for it, et cetera, if really the intent is to cure the problem, and that's what it is. We want our neighborhoods to look nice. We want everyone to feel safe and et cetera, and giving them that opportunity. But then again, don't take advantage.
Right.
We want to have, everyone comply with the law and the town code. And it's there for a reason. It's not there, to bust your chops, so to speak.
And it's the neighbors that are complaining.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're
so
not aggressively out there.
No.
Everything. For the most part, what we do is complaint-driven. So people
Correct.
should understand that. Rob, I want to give you an opportunity. I'm sure, especially that you appear in uniform, when you come knocking on someone's door, the initial reaction might be, oh no, now what?
Yeah.
But
it's
again,
common.
like I said earlier, you're there to keep people safe, make sure they are complying, and I've heard it many, many times that you go out of your way, you and your team go out of your way to help the business owner, to help the commercial user comply, so they're not going to get a summons, but more importantly, they're going to be safe, and the people that come in and out of their establishment are going to be safe. Their employees are going to be safe. Because I think,
Absolutely.
bottom line, that's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about. I mean, that's really our job in a nutshell, is just to make sure everybody's safe in the town. Not only the business owners, the employees that work at the establishments, the people who go into the stores to purchase goods and services. And, the biggest part of our job is really educating people.
Well, you know what? We're going to do that.
Yeah.
We're going to take a little break, and we're going to come back and educate you and me on what the fire marshal is all about.
You're watching ITV, Channel 18, Islip Television.
Hi, this is Angie Carpenter, Town of Islip Supervisor, welcoming you back to Supervisor Spotlight. So before we took a little break, we were talking to Rob Doucet, our Chief Fire Marshal, and he was taking us down the road of educating us about everything we wanted to know about being a fire marshal and what you do. And it's not easy.
It's not
easy.
It's not an easy job.
So tell me, when you walk into an establishment, what goes on?
Well, there's a couple different reasons why we would visit an establishment, whether it be a complaint on something happening there. We issue a multitude of operating permits, whether it be a public assembly permit for bars and restaurants and places of gathering, a hazardous materials operating permit at gas stations, service stations, or multiple dwelling rental permits. We have to go in, and part of the permit process is we complete an inspection and make sure there's no violations before we issue the permit. So we just do a complete inspection, and one of the biggest things everybody always asks is, oh, if you find something wrong, am I going to get in trouble? Well, no, you're not going to get in trouble. We're going to let you know what that we found that you need to correct. We give you time to correct it, and then we come back and complete a reinspection.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because if the property owner is demonstrating a willingness to want to comply, we're going to work with you.
Absolutely.
Because the end game is to have
Safety.
compliance, to
Exactly.
create that safe environment. And we do have a mechanism in the town code for opportunities for people to have multiple rentals, but you need to do it right.
Absolutely.
And you need to do it safely.
Yep.
And, there have been instances in the past when, God forbid, there's been a fire, and the first thing, I'll call Tony and say, did we get complaints on that house?
Yeah.
Were they in compliance? Because right away, you fear for that,
Yeah.
if it's a basement apartment that didn't
Absolutely.
have egress,
Yep.
or, what the situation
Right.
is.
No working alarm system or anything like that. But you said before, if they they're willing to work with us, we're willing to work with them on some of the lesser violations. Anything that's really major and really life safety issues, those need to be corrected right away.
Yep.
And we stress that to the people when we complete our inspections.
But even that, if it's a life-threatening situation, if they're demonstrating that they've contacted
Yep.
whomever they have to contact, they've got an appointment and they're
Yep.
coming and they're doing what they need to do, we're reasonable.
Absolutely.
We're reasonable.
Absolutely. I mean, there are facilities that we visit that we might write a page of violations, and when we go back and complete our reinspection, maybe only a third of them are done, because some of them take some time.
Yeah.
But as long as they, demonstrate a willingness to get the facility up to compliance, and they can show that they've done some of the things we've asked them to do, then we'll grant more time and come back in another couple of weeks just to make sure everything's brought up to code.
There's a tremendous amount of training that goes involved with becoming a fire marshal, starting with taking a civil service test and qualifying and going to an academy and being trained, et cetera. But tell us a little bit about, what prompted you to do that?
Well, I joined my local fire department when I was 20 years old, and right away I just fell in love with the job, fighting fires, the camaraderie with the other firemen, and knew right away that's something I wanted to be involved with, as my career, for the rest of my life. And there are a couple different career paths that you can take, with the fire service, and I tried some of them. Some of them are harder to get into than others. Yeah. And I would always just try and keep an iron in the fire, as they say. So I take a lot of different civil service tests, fire marshal being one of them. I know that when I took it, I didn't really expect to get called. I mean, it's a relatively hard test to take.
It's a difficult test, it is.
To take and pass. The failure rate's quite high. But I ended up getting called by the town of Islip back in 2007. Got the job, and still here, and I love every day coming
and
to
we're
work.
so delighted that you are here,
Yeah,
really. And now he is our chief fire marshal, so you are truly a success story.
Yeah, thank you.
And being in the fire service as a volunteer too. I mean, we have so many of our fire marshals who do that double duty, who really give to their community, giving back in being in the fire service. Ambulance companies, they're really very, very well trained and very, very caring. And, we're coming into the holiday season now. People are pulling out their decorations and everything and going to get their Christmas tree and all. And so we thought it'd be a good opportunity for you to share some safety tips.
Again, education's the biggest part
Education,
of our job, right? So,
exactly.
yeah, the winter holidays are upon us. It's usually everybody's favorite time of year. Get together with friends and family, entertain, cook, right? Exchange gifts. But with all that stuff going on, the risk for fire increases. So, but you could there's little things that you can do to minimize the risk. So, Christmas trees is always one of the big things that everybody talks about, right? Real or fake, which one you want to get. But if you do get a real one, you gotta maintain it. You gotta make sure it's watered every day.
And not leave the house with the lights on.
Never leave. Well, that's another. When you put lights on your Christmas tree. Nowadays they make LED ones, which are really safe. They don't get warm. They don't get hot to the touch. So it's better for the live Christmas trees. But turn them off when you go to bed. Turn them off when you leave the house. It just decreases the risk of anything happening to your tree. You got to keep it watered. You got to keep it watered. That's the biggest thing.
I know, it's a pain to get on the floor
Yeah.
and get to that bucket, but
Yep.
you have to do it. Although they have these devices, I don't know if they really work, where you can kind of
I'm not really
be
sure
filling
about
it
those
from
yet.
up here. But
Yeah.
there is a video that I have seen, and maybe we'll kind of see if we can get a hold of it and run it on ITV, and because it's so impactful in how quickly
Yes.
a Christmas tree can take off and be burning. And
Unfortunately, actual Christmas tree fires aren't that common, which is really good. But if it does happen, they're really dangerous because it happens really fast. The Christmas trees themselves, when they're really dry, have a really high potential of high heat and high flame. And they're usually in someone's living room, right? So the heat starts going, and then it just gets everything else in the room going, and it becomes really hot and really unattainable really fast.
I've noticed too over the past number of years that candles have gotten so much more popular than they used to be. People are putting them out, the jar candles and candlesticks or whatever, and lighting candles in abundance.
Yes.
They too can cause.
Absolutely. And there's always an uptick in fires during the holiday season from candles, because everybody uses a lot more candles during the holiday season. But yeah, candles are very dangerous. You can't just leave them unattended. Definitely can't leave the house or go to bed with them on. And even when they get low, some people tend to burn them until there's nothing left. But you really can't do that. You got to go by the manufacturer's instructions that are on it. When it gets to a certain level, you got to just throw it away.
Or better yet, get the battery-operated
There you
ones.
go.
They even
Battery-operated.
flicker.
Listen, the technology's come a long way, and those candles look pretty nice.
Yeah,
now.
they do,
And they're
right?
very safe.
Yeah.
So
what are some of the other things?
Well, some of the other things, going back to the Christmas tree, because that's still a big one. When you set it up, don't block an exit from your house, because if something happens, then you're not going to be able to get out right away.
True.
You're decorating the house. Don't put any decorations next to the fireplace, and open candles.
Some pretty practical tips. Practical tips. Well, thank you so much, Rob. We
Thank
really
you for having me.
appreciate that. We're going to have a very happy, safe Christmas. We're going to
Yes.
take a little break here, and we'll come back and talk a little bit about the approaching storm season, although I think we're not going to have any here in Islip. We'll be right back.
You're watching ITV, Channel 18, Islip Television.
Hi, this is Angie Carpenter, Town of Islip Supervisor, back with Supervisor Spotlight. We were talking earlier with Rob Doucet, our Chief Fire Marshal, about keeping safe during the holiday season and so forth. And off camera, Commissioner Prudenti reminded me of the incredible job that Rob, and I shouldn't need reminding, but you and your team and everyone did because of the extra burden that was put upon them during COVID, that 2 years plus, with all of the outdoor dining that was proliferating, and in areas where traditionally there weren't, and talking about having safe egress and so forth. It was a challenge.
It was a challenge, and to work with planning department on getting those plans out, and
And those
give them to Rob.
permits,
The
I mean,
permits,
like within a day, they were
yeah,
getting.
the
and it
turnaround was great. Rob and his staff did a great job getting out there. Obviously, we wanted the businesses to stay open. And I had business owners, and I'm sure Supervisor, you did too, that made them get through the COVID
Oh, absolutely.
pandemic.
They said they couldn't have done it absent
Correct.
that.
And for Rob's guys to, talk about that safety, we had outdoor dining, outdoor heating, tents, you name it. They sprang into action
Every
with the
challenge,
plans.
every
Yeah,
challenge.
and we did.
Yep.
And to see, a town our size, think about all the restaurants. I don't know, Rob, how many permits did we issue?
Oh, in the beginning,
hundreds.
there was, a couple
Yeah.
hundred, yeah.
Yeah, there were hundreds, literally
Yeah.
hundreds.
And to talk to the store owners now, saying, A, some of them still like the outdoor storage
Yeah.
because it worked for them, the outdoor dining, and B, it got them through those
It was
tough
a
times.
lifeline. It was a
Yeah.
lifeline. And, the vast majority, thank goodness, of our businesses got through COVID. There were enormous challenges for them. And when the town was awarded some ARPA funding in the second round of federal funding, we designated a portion of that funding to our businesses. They could apply for KIT grants, Keep Islip Thriving, up to $5,000, and that program is still up and running. It was interesting, I heard this morning that the town of Oyster Bay was kicking off the same kind of
Oh, yeah.
initiative, and I was waiting to hear how much, and it was the same thing, up to 5,000. So anyone out there listening, any of the businesses or organizations that suffered a loss during COVID, it's not too late. There is still some funding available to apply for that grant. And you can call 631-224-5506, and we'll give you the pertinent information so that you can do that. But here we are in the month of December,
Yeah.
just about, and the storms might be coming. I say might. In my world, the
Well,
glass is always half full. So I'm hoping
in the
we have
emergency-
another easy
Yeah.
winter season.
Well, the first half is the hurricane season.
Yep.
So that's June and November.
Right.
So it seems that it was a really mild
We had a couple of
couple of
little
storms,
things
yeah.
go,
And,
but
we, and,
for
and
the most
flooding is
part,
always an issue in a town.
Flooding is
in
an
some
issue.
spots. But we got through that, and now is the winter. So that brings another myriad of problems. Those northeast storms can be just as bad as a hurricane. Those nor'easters that come with the snow and the rising of the bay, and,
Right.
and, in our floodplain areas that get flooded will get flooded.
And also, too, we as a town, our entire southern border is on the water,
Yeah.
either the bay or the ocean, for that matter. And when we do have a nor'easter, and you can have that imperfect combination of
And we've had them in the
high
past, yeah.
tide and
Yeah.
full moon and everything working against us. And when that water comes up, as much as our DPW and parks crews get out there and make sure those storm drains are clear and all of those pumps are working, they take every precaution that they can. But when that bay comes up, there's just no place for that water to go.
Yep.
So.
I remember that it was a couple of years ago. There was a wedding down in Bayshore, and
Yep.
and that was nobody saw it coming, and the water came up, and we had to evacuate
Yep.
the lake house. But people forget on the mainland that we also have Fire Island, and year-round communities there.
You mentioned that with the wedding, that was 2 years ago, but just this year, I went to a wedding over in Babylon at the old John Anthony's. It was on a Friday evening when it was like just 2 weeks ago when
Yeah,
we had those
flood.
heavy rains, and I couldn't go down the block you normally would go down to get to the restaurant because the trucks from the village were there pumping.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, they were flooded, they were inundated,
Yeah.
and I really felt bad for anyone who was coming from afar that didn't know the neighborhood because it was kind of tricky going around the back way to get in there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So the storm season, although we might have dodged the hurricane part, we still have the winter and the snow and the nor'easters and all of the damage that could bring. So we're always on total contact with our state partners, our communities over in Fire Island. We always stay in contact with, and it could be just like you said, full moon, high tide,
Yep.
rain, inundation. Doesn't take much to flood Fire Island.
and you kind of glossed over it. We keep in touch. The fact that our public safety team is so engaged and keeping in touch with all the other levels of government, all the other public safety entities that are out there, our connections with all the fire service, with the fire chiefs and so forth. We participate every month in the Fire Island Law Enforcement and Security Council. In fact, they meet here during the wintertime monthly, and it's an opportunity for all the public safety professionals to kind of network. All in the same room, share information, and when something happens, you know who you're talking to.
Right.
Or if the players change, you know that right away. Oh, here's the new guy from the Coast Guard now, you know.
And we're lucky in our town that we have a robust public safety. We have our own emergency operations center.
We do.
We do activate when needed, and relationship building, right? It's all to pick up the phone and call the state when you know the guy directly. Really smooths over the operation.
And we've been able to, you know, have a cooperation between the New York State Department of Public Works. Their yard is adjacent to our town yard in CI. And, you know, we took the time to go down there and meet with the guys, you know, and help them out on occasion and vice versa. They've been able to help us out on occasion.
And the other groups, the ferry companies, you know, we have quite an extensive, in between several Sable ferries and Bayshore ferries. To have those communications, do we have to get people off the island, or we got to evacuate, you know? And you have those conversations, like the supervisor said. We have those monthly conversations in this boardroom here with those players from.
And it does help.
It does.
And we do have a lot of challenges too. You know, we're the only town around that owns an airport. And, you know, clearing snow and ice and flooding issues are even exacerbated that much more at the airport, because what they say there, the pavement has to be broom dry for that plane to take off. And the snow removal equipment, actually, if those of you who have never seen it, maybe we'll see if we can get some footage on that, are these huge brushes that are maybe 2.5, 3 feet in diameter that really actually sweep the runways before the plane can take off. So it's quite a robust
Well, if it's the runways
operation.
or the streets, to try to get the streets clean is a challenge. So anytime there's snow, we'd love people to get off the road. Get those
And
parked
that
vehicles
message
in the
goes out.
driveway, even on your lawn if you had to. Let DPW plows.
And the fire marshals won't come out and ticket you. If you've got your car on the lawn, getting it off the
We'll
road
give you the
is
vibe.
so important.
Yeah.
It's so important. It really, really is. And our crews out there under the direction of Tom Owens and also to Marty Blue in DEC, every single department comes together, and that's the beauty of the town of Islip, you know. So anyway, I want to thank you guys for coming down today. I hope everyone out there watching, and certainly you two gentlemen, have an absolutely wonderful, wonderful, blessed, safe holiday season here in our wonderful town of Islip.